Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been our first week back since all the way back, I think our last show last year was December 20th. And then we waited all the way until this week to come back. But hey, that's the longest break of the year. We're back. We're getting into it, and of course, a lot of great shows ahead of us this year. So everyone, welcome into the program. First things first, ComputerAmerica.com. After the program, that's where you'll find the show notes. The show notes will include everything, including a link to our guest website, and more on top of that, it will include everything from articles, reviews, show notes, videos, photos, social media, all that kind of thing, contests and more at computeramerica.com. Definitely check that out. So just trying to think, which is not happening very well. We hope that you enjoyed yesterday's show. That was a very interesting show to record, where we had on Persado, who polishes liquor. And as I said before yesterday on the show, I never drink on the show. But since it was part of the show, I took a couple shots, and you may have noticed I was sweating for the remainder of the show after I took the shots. I took those right to the head, and my speech was slurred. But overall, it was very fun. It was a very interesting interview, and we highly recommend you go back and check that out wherever podcasts are heard, of course. Now, with all that being said, why don't we go ahead, just jump right into things and bring on our guest, who, hey, if you're a longtime listener, no stranger. If you're new, congratulations. You probably picked one of the best episodes to tune into. We have with us Mr. Ralph Bond, longtime correspondent for the program. Worked with Intel, worked, of course, for Autodesk, and of course, been a correspondent here for Computer America for 15 years or something like that. It's been quite a while. So, Ralph, welcome back onto the program.
Hey, great to be here. Yeah, I was thinking the other day, how long have I been associated with the show? It goes way back.
I said 15 years. I know it's been longer. I think you've been on the show since like 2003 or 1 or something. It was early 2000s.
It's 20 plus years, I'm thinking, off the top.
Yeah, it's back when Craig had a live studio audience, and
yes.
Yeah, it's the show's changed a lot, but at the same time, hey,
the spirit is the same.
Spirit is the same. Show's changed a lot, and of course, hey, technology changed a lot as well. I'm sure that the first thing that you came on the show to talk about wouldn't be all that relevant today. So,
oh gosh, you're right. I mean, that's kind of fun to think about. 20 some odd years ago, where were we at? It was the beginnings of the real web explosion and the
it's like the internet. Do we need this? Yeah. Things like that.
Do we need it?
So of course, as I said before, I mentioned the show notes. If you're watching the video portion, you're going to be able to see the show notes up here on the show. After the program, you can find all the resources, links, videos, things like that. We are a radio program, but of course, this is one of those segments that is a little bit better suited to multimedia. And hey, we encourage you, even if you're listening on the radio, check us out after the fact. Check out the video. It's always a lot of fun. And yeah, Ralph. So before we get started, a little introduction with yourself in regards to what it is you try to accomplish here on Computer America.
Yeah, what I try to do as science and technology correspondent for the show is look for interesting stories that very frequently don't talk about products that are available right now or technologies that are available right now, but stuff that's in the lab, some stuff that's cooking in the back rooms and so forth that may have profound impact on our lives. And it's again a mixture of science, and sometimes it's computer technology, and sometimes it's consumer electronics. So it's a real grab bag, which is a blast. And we'll start off, actually, given the fact that Consumer Electronics Show just ended last week, this massive show that you were at as well. Maybe a few of the things that caught my eye over the week. And then we have the usual science and technology stuff we can do after we cover a few of these products.
Perfect. Yeah, I thought that would be a very good place because we kind of already apologized that people had to kind of find elsewhere to find the the current breaking news out of CES. We have, and by we I mean myself, I kind of had this realization that as I was walking around taking pictures, shaking people's hands and, using Germex, that Computer America, like what we're best suited for isn't so much like the current up to date minute by minute blow that so many other organizations have, teams. And I mean, dozens of people covering the floor doing that kind of thing.
Right.
Computer America is best served to get in contact with these companies and then invite them on the show. And I don't know where else you're going to, let's say, find an hour to find the engineer who made who made that weird automatic litter box or pet feeder that you're thinking about maybe, investing in. That's where Computer America shines, these long form, informative episodes. And so, hey, that's where we were at with CES. We haven't talked much about individual products about CES, so all of this should be pretty fresh for our audience, Ralph. So please feel free to get into it.
Okay, so the first one that caught my eye is an article from CNET called "The Most Important Health Devices to Know About from CES 2020." And as you know, Ben, and listeners of the show for a long time know that I'm kind of a health technology nut. That's one of my favorite things. So this, of course, caught my attention. I'm going to share with you one product out of the set of products these folks at CNET covered. And it's really interesting, of course, if you're a diabetic. We all know diabetic people with diabetes often have to do the blood prick of the finger and the test, and it's very uncomfortable and kind of annoying to have to go through that every single day and so on and so forth. So that's a pain. But technology companies today, as the article points out, are working on non-invasive ways to measure blood sugar. And showcased at the Consumer Electronics Show was GluTrack, GLUTRAC. It's a smartwatch that purports to measure blood sugar levels in your body. And it's just kind of interesting. In the world of smartwatches, there's kind of everything under the sun, but this is the first time I've seen one that measures blood sugar levels. So the watch collects various vital signs, including heart rate, for example, and then uses artificial intelligence algorithm to calculate your blood glucose. Now, I can't attest to its accuracy and so forth, and I think if you're a diabetic and you're interested in this product down the road because it's not available yet, please consult with your doctor to make sure this is something that would make sense for you. But the idea of the technology is really interesting. So there are sensors on the back of the watch that can record health data automatically every 15 minutes. And there's even a finger sensor. So if you're looking at the show notes, you can see the picture. There's a finger sensor next to the watch face where you can take on-demand readings. And the whole process, this also interested me, takes about 1 minute to measure, analyze in the cloud, so the watch needs to be linked to the internet, and deliver measurements. So once again, no price, no availability, no delivery date, but just Google GluTrack if you're interested, if this might be something for your life. Check it out and stay tuned for when it's going to be available and what its price is going to be.
Yeah, this is and this falls into line with one of the trends that we saw out at CES this year. A couple of years, and I would say like 5 years ago, the big trend was were sensors. Air quality sensors, motion sensors, light sensors. All kinds of sensors. That was about 5 years ago, and we've really come into the world where everything has a built-in sensor. Now we are this year at CES. They really showed that Now with all this data, they're showing what they can do, and companies are being very upfront about wanting every little bit of data because, Ralph, we've had the privacy conversation on the show before, but that conversation seems to have completely went by the wayside, and now companies kind of expect people will be okay, as they said here, even within the article, that they're okay with every 15 minutes, this sensor will be tracking their blood glucose and their fitness and all that kind of thing. Data is kind of a foregone conclusion. Now we're heading into a future of where, what benefits does that bring us? And you're right. I did not see this particular product at the show. Healthcare was a massive interest.
Huge.
But that's just, kind of my feeling on it was that was a trend. We now have data, what good can come from it. And I think for diabetics, like you mentioned, finger pricking isn't the end of the world, but it's probably one of the lowest part of their days. So being able to not do this, amazing. And really even beyond that, this is something that we saw with aging in place and, telemedicine, being able to provide healthcare, either over the internet or, kind of away from a person.
Right.
Kids or their physicians can now track their blood glucose level. They don't have to rely on the patient to take their own levels. Now they know, for instance, that if I'm living across the country, or let's say I'm away at CES, I know that my parents have taken their blood glucose level and I know what it is, so I don't have to be as concerned.
Yeah,
there's a lot of benefits.
Good point. Yes, it is. It opens a door of really interesting things in terms of monitoring a person's health. There have been lots of products that monitor your heart rate or monitor other factors that might relate to your heart. But again, this is the first one for blood sugar. I thought was just really kind of a compelling idea. And it's a beautiful website. Go out there and check out the website. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, one of our chatters actually mentioned that her father doesn't take his blood sugar checks as regular as he should. So, being able to know, again, not only what it is, but if they actually took it, that could be a very important part of just overall healthcare for them. So,
agree.
It's very, very interesting. And by the way, real quick, just this whole thing with connected healthcare, so many of these companies that I talk to out there, especially in this field, they're like, how much does it cost? Because CES actually discourages people from putting prices on things. And so many times they're like, we are getting FDA approval and it should be available through your insurance. So hopefully that means a lot of people will have access to it.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that would be good.
Yep, absolutely. So you're right. So many gadgets out there, thousands of gadgets, but that is a really, really cool one.
Cool.
Yep. So story number 15, I guess.
Yeah. So like I say, folks, we're starting kind of at the end of my show notes today, starting with story 14, because I thought, CES was just so recent that why don't we cover some of the CES stuff, which I happened to pocket at the end of my report today. So that's why we're on story 15 already. So this is a story from Business Insider. The headline was, these are the 8 coolest gadgets, cars, and concepts we saw at the biggest tech event of the year. I picked one, and I think, Ben, you were saying before we went on air that you saw this car as well. It's Sony's Vision S, as in Sam, Vision S car. And that opens up a whole bunch of questions. Why is Sony building a car? I would have expected them to take somebody else's car and load it up with technology and say, look what we could do. Do you have any insight on that? Are they actually thinking of bringing a car to the market?
I will say Sony will bring a car to market the day before Apple will bring a car to market. So Sony showed. So Sony had a giant area in the central hall, I believe, that they were showing off, like you mentioned. Actually, you just said it. We make the technology that will go into a car. Sony wanted to build a concept car. It made a lot of headlines because everyone's like, "What? Sony, the PlayStation people, they're making a car now?" Like it grabbed headlines. People loved it, but really, what it was showing off was the infotainment and sensors and other technology that other car companies are should be looking into. And really, I kind of focused on the infotainment because Ralph, we talked about self-driving cars ad nauseum on the show.
Yes.
But what happens when people aren't driving? They're bored and they want something to do. Sony wants to move into that space. Sony wants to provide the screens, the monitors. They want to provide the infotainment system, the software, the operating system, the content. Sony wants to be there every step of the way in turning cars from just safety and transportation vehicles to all around entertainment hubs, because that's what self-driving cars are going to have to be. They're
Yeah.
going to not just have to be safe and, reliable, they're going to have to be entertaining. So, the car was there. I saw it. It was swarmed, and I really didn't care too much about it because I knew Sony was not going to make a car. But they showed off everything else that they're working on, and boy, Sony has such a unique vision for the future when it comes to how people will be digesting content. And Ralph, you may have heard of a technology called stereoscopic 3D. Yeah, which is kind of like 3D content without glasses. Sony was the only one on the show, or that I saw at CES, that was still actively developing it. So,
Wow.
yeah,
That's so cool.
Sony had a lot to show off.
Yeah, yeah. And then regarding the car, they did say in their announcement that they plan to test this car later this year. So I'm with you. I'm skeptical about Sony actually going into the automobile business, but nonetheless, they said they'd test their futuristic prototype car later this year. And to pick up on a little bit on what you were saying, the concept car, this Vision S from Sony, it's decked out with 33 sensors for monitoring activity around the car, which I would interpret to mean safety things, all the lane detect and auto braking and all these kinds of things, and maybe other stuff, but 33 sensors. And then speakers. This is fun. If you're an audio nut, speakers with 360-degree audio built into every seat in the vehicle, and a giant panoramic screen that stretches across the entire dashboard. So it's kind of like a geek's car dream come true.
But really, we saw a lot of concept cars, and not really in the central hall. The cars were kind of sequestered away into, I think it was the North Hall had all the cars, and
Yes, that's right.
And really, when you go to CES, and you know this, Ralph, because you've been, when you see at CES, it's not what's eventually going to make it into consumers' hands. It's what these companies are thinking of behind the scenes.
Right.
And then, of course, it moves away from the designers and the really pie in the sky people. Eventually, it turns itself over to the engineers who actually have to make it a reality. So you get to see what they're thinking. Cars going towards, and every single car company from Mercedes to BMW to Ford to Lexus, all these different companies, they all had not only giant center console monitors, but monitors that spanned the entire dashboard.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Cars were, I don't remember when it was that they started having really a strong presence of the automotive industry at Consumer Electronics Show. Gosh, it goes way back to when I used to go, but it was such a fun and a welcomed addition, to your point, because a lot of the fun technology that's happening for consumers to have that kind of on the road entertainment and infotainment and information and safety experience is really coming into the auto industry, which I think is fun. And then we talked about this also briefly before we went on air, Hyundai's flying taxis that they showcased a prototype of. That's the next story down here. And this thing's really quite remarkable. If you have the picture and from the show notes, it looks to me kind of like a helicopter combined with a drone, combined with a fixed wing aircraft. It's really a remarkable hybrid of aeronautic technologies in a way. So here's the story. And by the way, this story also came from CNET. It's one of the things that they liked a lot. Hyundai unveiled its all-electric vertical takeoff and landing concept flying taxi at the Consumer Electronics Show, and they'll be partnering with Uber to deploy this thing as part of a service that could be up and running by 2023. Now, here's the reality check. The vehicle is designed to fly for up to 60 miles. That's its range on the battery, and has a cruising speed, though, of 180 miles an hour. Wow. Uber says it hopes to begin demonstration flights this year. And once again, you and I were talking about how a lot of times in these electric vehicles, whether they're airborne or ground, that you would have situations where you would land or arrive, swap out the batteries, pop in some pre-charged batteries, sort of like I do with my little DeWalt drill, right? I just pop in a new battery and away I go. So I think if you have that scenario going, I could see this making sense for short haul, maybe from flying from downtown Manhattan out to JFK or something, that kind of stuff, right? So we'll see what happens, but it's coming. It's getting real. Here you go.
Yeah. This idea that there's a better way to do transit from an airport to anywhere else, and mainly downtown. Maybe we talked about it when it was, kind of a new thing, but
Right.
But Elon Musk had his boring company, his tunneling company, and he was planning on tunneling under, I think it was Los Angeles or somewhere else with horrible traffic. And he wanted to dig a tunnel underneath LA from the airport, and it's a direct tunnel all the way to downtown LA. And he said that he could, using this tunneling system, he could cut commutes by so long, by so many minutes. It would take you, 15 minutes to get downtown instead of an hour and a half.
Yeah. Right.
Just like you said with the flying taxis, I think Manhattan is uniquely positioned with all of its high rises that can double as kind of like helipads. And really, with Uber, if you contract one of these things, let's say you could take up to 4 people and so many pounds of luggage, and it broke down to like $40 a person, and you're able to get downtown in 20 minutes. Maybe it's only like a 3-mile flight, but at the same, or like even like a 10-mile flight, but then you're able to, kind of just ferry people back and forth. That's something that I think Uber would be very, very interested in. And I think people would be perfectly okay with it. I mean, Ralph, looking at these things, I know it's just a prototype. We haven't even seen these things fly yet, or I've never seen them fly. Would you do this as an alternative to something that would take a lot longer? But of course, this is new and maybe scary. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's a great question, because I was talking to another friend about this whole thing, because some of my friends that I talk to about electric vehicles, especially anything that's airborne, it's one thing to be on the ground, but up in the air. And if you think about the electromechanical issues, there's far less that can go wrong with an electric engine and a battery, right? There's far fewer moving parts, far fewer things that could go wrong than a traditional petrol or fossil fuel based aircraft that we've known and loved for decades, right? So in a way, yes, I think if it were FAA approved and so forth and gone through all of its rigorous testing and so forth, of course, in this day and age with the Boeing crisis, you can start to wonder a little bit about some of that stuff. But if it went through rigorous testing and prototyping and blah 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 and certified, yes, I would give it a shot, because again, it's a more simple mechanical thing than a traditional aircraft.
Absolutely. So one thing that for everyone out there who's simply listening and can't look at this thing, this one and another one from a company called Bell, you can look them up, BLL.
Yes, Bell, right.
Yeah, they had a prototype out there as well. Theirs was actually smaller than Hyundai's. And I think that, maybe for photos, that didn't photograph as well because, Ralph, imagine you're in the convention center in Vegas and like the biggest thing is going to catch your attention. But in terms of practical design, smaller, more compact is going to be obviously much more ideal.
Especially when you're landing on the top of buildings, as you pointed out before.
Yeah, exactly. So like this one's bigger, and Hyundai got all the press because I think they were much more awesome to photograph. But at the same time, for those just listening, these things resemble, and not like helicopters, but they probably resemble more like drones, honestly.
But
and, Yeah, that's the technology that we're really talking about here, is that these things are just oversized drones that will carry people instead of, packages for Amazon or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, to see 2 different concepts for air taxis kind of leads me to believe that people are taking this seriously. What companies are actually going to be making these things? Like you mentioned, Boeing is going through its own its own thing, but it's interesting that Hyundai would, be at the forefront of this. Bell would be at the forefront of this. I'm wondering, is Sony, is Samsung, are some of these other tech companies, are they up for manufacturing these things? Because,
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be a car company. I don't know if it's going to be a tech company, but someone has to make them because they are certainly attractive to, businesses.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
very, very good article. I like that.
Yeah, that's a fun one. And then the next one comes from Tech Radar. And the headline for this one was CES 2020 highlights video and news of the most exciting new tech. And I pulled out the one that I thought was both kind of fascinating and sort of funny and interesting. And you have to see the video of this stuff. I don't think I put a video link in there, but if you Google it, you'll find it. I'm talking about Samsung's Chef, as in cook, Chef Bot. So this thing's hilarious and it's just so fun to watch. So here's a few of the data points from the article. So, and if you have the show notes, you can see a picture of it. So Samsung's Chef Bot is comprised of 2 robotic arms suspended under a cabinet and over a kitchen countertop. Okay.
Normally when you
Picture
kind of
that in your mind if you don't have the show notes. The Tech Radar reporters were able to watch the Chef Bot rummage through cabinets, pour ingredients into a pan or bowl, and mix them to create a tofu salad using artificial intelligence and computer vision algorithms. That's the technology underlying this. And the tofu salad was just one of 35 salad recipes the machine is programmed to whip up. And oh yeah, you've got the video. It's great. It's quite charming. The bot is run using voice commands. That's kind of interesting. And the Chef Bot has 6 degrees of freedom in the arms, 4 main arm joints, and 3 fingers to pinch and hold various kitchen utensils, as you can see in the video here. Its diameter and reach is meant to mimic that of human arms. So yeah, making a salad, how profound and important is that? Maybe not, but perhaps maybe for fast food restaurants. Or think to yourself, if this can do this, could it do things like mixed medicines, or could it do other services in different industries, different applications that might have more profound and serious application than making a salad for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I liked about it. Robotics, kind of a fun, I think they probably did this as kind of an eye-catching, almost kind of technology stunt, but the implications are interesting and the scale of this robot is really interesting too. It's a pretty compact set of arms.
Yeah, that's really what I took away from this. We did see these being demonstrated, and people.
Oh, did you? Fun.
Yeah, much like the. Much like the air taxis that we just talked about, things just photograph better. And this one, was one of those things that filmed really well. And I got to say that it's not so much about, robots looking like this in the kitchen, because let's face it, when it finally will happen, robots will, how do I put it? Making things that look like us, catches our attention because wow, look, robot arms, I have arms. It's, I can relate to this. But really, if you wanted to automate a kitchen, Ralph, and, I'm sure that you've dealt with plenty of automation in your time, you could probably design a robot that, instead of having to grab a bottle of olive oil, it probably had its own cartridge or container or reservoir of olive oil within the robot already.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. Yeah, the cabinets above the arms could contain a lot of ingredients.
Yeah, and hoses and that kind of thing.
Exactly, and feed it into. That's an interesting thought. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so clearly you could design this thing to be much more kind of self-contained. But again, Samsung here was just showing off that their robotics are very agile, and CES is not just about it is about consumer electronics, but it's not just for consumers. It's for the industry to kind of talk to itself and say, look what Samsung's doing. Do we need robotics in any way in our factories, production, manufacturing? They have very nimble, precise, delicate robotics. So I feel like that's more, it was great for consumers. People loved the videos, but at the same time, they were showing other companies come to Samsung for agile robotic,
and kind of related to my comment earlier about making a salad is one thing. What else could this technology do? To your point, Ben, CES with nearly 200,000 attendees,
Yeah.
the attendee, let's call it demographics, includes a lot of researchers and on the forefront developers and so forth for companies around the world that might look at this and go, ding, this could help me with this problem over here, something that has nothing to do with making salads and everything to do with taking advantage of this articulate robotic arm technology. So you're right. It's not just to say, here's products you can go down to your store and buy right now today. No,
You will
these
never
are
see this,
technologies. Technologies and capabilities. And it's the idea to share it with this huge audience and see what happens, right? It's catalytic.
What happens if this type of robotics, like, instead of the fingers that would be used to grasp utensils and things like that, what if that were switched with the little thing that you sort pills with? And what if this becomes the way that pharmacies now decide this is the way that we sort pills? And instead of doing it by person, we do it by robot. So little things like that, very interesting.
Yeah, fun stuff. And then the next one, maybe you saw this too, but Lenovo unveiled what it claims to be the first 5G enabled laptop called the Yoga 5G. Did you see this thing or hear about this at the show?
We stopped by the Lenovo booth. They had a lot of stuff showing off.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
It's and a lot of their they had a lot of stuff for students. They had some stuff for professionals. This was certainly one of those that would be for, I guess, kind of the on-the-go professional.
Yeah,
it's not so much that I have a problem with the technology behind Lenovo. I have a problem with 5G. So we can talk about that after you do the story. But 5G is a little bit of a sticking point for me.
Yeah, and I think again, they probably just wanted to get a foot in the door of taking advantage of the populist kind of fascination with 5G. It's sort of the groovy thing of the day in terms of possibilities. And I understand where you're going with your hesitancy about 5G. But anyway, the Lenovo folks have a line of laptops that they've had for a long time called Yoga this, Yoga that, whatever. And basically a Yoga clamshell laptop can fold over itself and become a tablet. That's not that unique. Many people make that kind of product. But they claim that this Yoga 5G model is the first laptop to run on Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8CX platform, which includes built-in support for 5G connections, allowing the Yoga 5G to connect via a service provider and access super fast mobile internet. And they claim also it can have up to a 24-hour battery life. That's pretty phenomenal. And the price, when they say it's going to be available toward the end of this first quarter of 2020 at a starting price of $14.99. So, we'll see.
So, and as I said before, my issue with 5G, if you want 5G, and really I'm talking to the audience out there, if people want 5G, the best way is probably to go through, a cell carrier and say, I want to buy my own 5G antenna for my house. And they will be able to sell you one for maybe like $800. And then of course you have to pay for the data plan. And then you will have 5G in your house that is probably usable. If you're going to buy something like this laptop and say, I'm going to wait for the 5G rollout. I know that AT&T and Verizon and so on and so forth, they've promised by the end of this year and so on and so forth. 5G is not going to make it to the masses until, again, just my personal guess, 4 to 5 years.
Wow,
because to get the same coverage of 4G LTE, you need, I think it's like 5 to 6 times the amount of antennas to actually get the same coverage, because the and Ralph, you might know the physics better than I do, but there's a lot more energy, I guess, or it's a lot. Okay, to say it very,
it's
very
a
stupidly,
range issue.
It's a lot more squiggly than 4G, so it's much more prone to interference. It can transfer a lot more data at much higher speeds, but at the same time, it won't go as far and it won't propagate through concrete walls. It won't propagate through even people. So that's my hesitance with 5G. Everyone's like, oh, by the end of the year, everything's going to be 100 times faster, and it's like, yeah, if you can get it, but odds are you won't be one of the lucky few who's going to get it unless you buy it for yourself. So
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point, and you're right about the 5G. As I understand it, it's I'll call it range. In other words, you have to have so many more antennas and repeaters and things like this because it's a short range kind of thing, right?
yeah.
And so that's one of the dilemmas with it. The in theory in the lab and in ideal testing conditions, it's pretty spectacular. But you're
Well,
right. Let's see how it rolls out into reality.
it was probably one of your stories that we did, but we talked about scientists in a lab, and what happens in a lab is not what happens in real life.
Right.
But scientists in a lab were able to take either a laser beam. They were also able to do it with just basic fluorescent lighting, and they were able to hit a sensor that could then transfer data over lasers, which is kind of like fiber optics today. But they were also able to transfer data over fluorescent lighting. And the only problem was that if you got between that light source and the sensor, your internet would go out. And that was much faster than what we were seeing with 5G. So like we have better technologies. It's just they're not very applicable in the real world. And 5G, I don't know how it was sold as this is going to work, but I'm so hesitant that they're going to be able to get this out. Like it's coming, just not in any kind of timely manner. So
Yeah. No, you raise a really good point. Well, then now we can go back to the top of the notes
all the way back
and
up,
pick
absolutely.
up there. So I don't know if you heard this story or not, but it sure caught my eye. It came out last month, so it's not super fresh story, but I just thought, wow, this is interesting.
Actually, and sorry to cut you off right there real quick, but this was one of the best things I saw at CES. And,
great.
And this actually did play a big part where people weren't saying, I guess like in like 2016 when smart assistants were first coming out, it was Apple HomeKit, it was Google Home, and it was of course Amazon and the Alexa arena. Everyone was branded with like their gang sign, which was
their silo.
Yeah, and well, no, they were all tagged with this will work in this ecosystem. I did not see a single booth that said it will only work with Alexa or, this will only work with Google. And I think this is why, is because even if they're designed to work with one, other ecosystems are going to be able to take advantage of that. And this was huge in that you didn't have to worry about what it was designed for because everything's just going to start working for people, which is great.
Exactly. And to introduce the story here, it came from a magazine, Recode, and it was covered by many other publications too. But the headline was Amazon, Apple, and Google want all smart devices to talk to each other. So it's you're going to find out that what you have today is, if I'm a developer of a smart home product, I have to write, I'll badly make an analogy, but kind of a driver for the Alexa environment, or a driver for the Google Home environment, or a driver or software that lets it play nice in the Apple environment, right? So I can do it. I can say, here you go, Ben. Here's my groovy little screen device for your kitchen. It can support all these different environments, but I, as a developer, have to have three different again, I use the loose term drivers to make it happen. What we're talking about, which has made this story so interesting to me, is that the three companies in question, Amazon, Google, and Apple, are talking about a common single, again, I'll use the phrase driver or software solution that can be employed. So I don't have to write three separate flavors for my device that I'm selling. So that's the thing that's kind of cool. And as it says here, in a rare show of unity, Google, Amazon, and Apple have joined forces to create a new standard for communicating with smart home devices. They're attempting to simplify what is currently a siloed and confusing experience for people trying to set up smart homes. Of course, we all know this. Not all smart devices work with all smart assistants or smart speakers, unless the developer of the product goes the extra mile to ensure that it can. So here's the name of this. It's the Connected Home over IP, that's Internet Protocol. Connected Home over IP project, is this what the three companies are talking about, will be free for any maker of smart home devices. This is great. For example, with the new standard, a smart light manufacturer will only have to use one connectivity standard in order for its lights to communicate with Google Assistant, Alexa, and or Siri. That's pretty cool. Right now, the manufacturers, we said a moment ago, would have to do 3 separate communications protocols to do so, which is expensive, of course, and time consuming. So, when will this happen? Here's the reality check on this. The group plans to release a draft of the standard and a preliminary reference open source implementation late this calendar year. But ding, 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 the authors of the article do warn us it could take years before consumers have widespread access to universal smart devices of using this new standard. But applause, it's a step in the right direction.
So my long-winded response to this is going to be, a lot of other companies were thinking of getting into not just the connected home, but making the ecosystem. Like we've heard of Z-Wave, Bixby from Samsung wanted to be a smart assistant. There were so many other kind of connected home ecosystems that everyone was considering at some point being the one. Either that was going to be
right.
like I think like Honeywell, GE, really any major player in the appliance or thermostat or whatever, they had their own ecosystem, and they all said, we don't want to do that anymore. They just want to be, they just want users to be able to jump into their device, use whatever device they already have, and everything is just going to start working together. They see the importance of, not making this overly complicated and just making sure it works for people right out of the box. Which is great. And actually, kind of speaking of Apple, Ralph, I don't know if you heard this story just yesterday, but, Apple has been batting around the idea for a little while now. I'm assuming, Ralph, USB. It's made a lot of people's lives a lot easier.
Yes.
USB Type-C is one of the latest standards that everyone is adopting except Apple. Apple is sticking strong with their Lightning connector. It looks super similar, but at the same time, Apple is not playing ball. Well, probably within the next, 1 or 2 iterations of the iPhone and the MacBook. Yeah, the MacBook is already type USB-C compatible. Everyone, in the industry should be using USB here in a matter of, just a couple of years. Like that will be another universal standard. And like you said, it just makes everything easier. And, not to toot our own horn too much, but we did get the business cards of HDMI. We got the business card of USB, and we got the business card of DisplayPort. So the people who make DisplayPort, which is another, kind of video interface connection. So we're going to have all those people on the show, and it may not be the most engaging, but you'd be surprised how interesting, talking about these standards and how much work goes in behind the scenes to get all these companies to play together. It's actually very interesting. So hopefully on the show, we're going to be talking about standardization, although not about, connected home over IP standardization, though I'm glad to see it. It's going to make a lot of people very, very happy when things just work.
Yeah. And I can't help but throw in a little history nugget about USB that you might find interesting. And maybe you already know this, but I'm in Hillsboro, Oregon, which is about 17 miles west of Portland, Oregon. But out here in Hillsboro, Oregon, we have the largest concentration of factories and people and research labs for Intel Corporation in the world. About 20,000 people for Intel. And I was with Intel, as you know, for many, many years. I was one of the first people to promote USB, this nascent twinkle in the eye technology, to the press corps, to the tech press corps. And USB, ladies and gentlemen, we owe a huge debt, not exclusively, but a monstrously large proportion debt for why we have USB to the Intel Architecture Labs, the research portion of Intel, headquartered here in Hillsboro, Oregon. So I'm very proud of my little role that I played in the very beginning of USB. Fascinating stuff.
I'm sure that it feels good that, and so like this can happen with technology a lot. You can say that, man, IBM is going to be in every home here in, looking forward. Like it feels good to be at the forefront of a technology and say, this is going to change a lot. And hey, you were right about USB. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. It was a great story. Well, the next one we've got is from my previous company, Autodesk. I
Hmm.
retired from them, as you know, in 2017, November. Loved it, loved it. And I worked for the architecture, engineering, and construction division of the company and just fell in love with technology for that industry. This comes from Autodesk's online magazine called Redshift. Redshift. Check it out, everybody. It's fascinating. And don't think, well, it's construction and it's boring. No, not boring. Headline: 7 technology innovations are coming to disrupt the construction industry in 2020. Again, Autodesk Redshift online. I've got the link in here for the show notes. You can go out and check it out. I'm going to just talk about 3 of the 7 that I thought were particularly interesting because
Sure.
they resonate with me. So, number one, smart wearables are gaining traction, such as exoskeleton suits that allow construction workers to lift up to 200 pounds. Ben, we've been talking about exoskeleton suits for a very long time. Our own Navy, the U.S. Navy, uses them a lot for workers that go under and clean hulls of ships and so forth. That's
Mm.
kind of interesting. But of course, an exoskeleton in this case, by bearing less weight, construction workers can experience less muscle fatigue and reduce the chances of occupational injury, which is a big problem in the construction industry, right? And I didn't know this. The article pointed out that Ford Motor Company is using exoskeleton suits now for some of their workers,
I
rather. Isn't
Yeah,
that interesting?
and I'd be very I'm sorry. I'm not sure if the article goes into what kind of exoskeleton because we've talked about a lot of different kinds of
Right.
exoskeleton.
Many kinds. Yes.
Maybe it's for people who have to like guide the heavy, car parts, and instead of having to
I think
do
so. That'd be
muscle
my
power,
guess.
yeah, that kind of thing.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Another company, and then we'll move on to Sue, but another company that's using them, we already mentioned them on the show, Boeing.
Hmm.
I guess having to work on those planes, and I guess the engineers have to, kind of contort themselves into weird positions, and and they have exoskeletons that kind of wrap around your feet, or I'm sorry, your legs, and
Mm.
it's like a chair that you can sit anywhere.
Oh, yes, I've
We
seen
talked about
that.
that on the show.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes. Yeah, you're right. There's so many fascinating examples of this. Now, the next point
sure.
of the 3 that caught my eye, I know you have a thing about 5G, and I respect that. I get it. I agree with you. But the next point they made in the article here was 5G networks are expected to launch across the world in 2020. Well, we'll see. And will make it possible for further development for the construction industry of teleremote equipment. So, remotely controlled construction equipment, robotic equipment, that's what we're talking about, and robotics that can recognize signals, receive input, map coordinates or instructions, make split-second decisions, and share communications. So, again, advances in wireless communication technology are predicted
let
in this
me
article.
let me clear something up because you were very
Yeah.
hesitant there, and I don't want it to come off that way. I 5G will change everything that you just said. 5G will be a great technological feat when it happens.
When it happens.
When
Yes,
it
that's
happens,
the point.
the 2020 timeline, I'm going on record saying it's before, maybe industry is going to have it a little faster than the everyday person, but that 2020 to me is probably more 2024 2025. So that's my only hang up. Everything else spot on.
Yeah, yeah. No, and you're right, though. It's good to emphasize not tomorrow, people. Hang tight. Few years, and we'll see what happens.
Hmm.
The next one, number 3 of the ones that I selected. This is so fun and so interesting. Roads made of post-consumer plastic waste. Now, the first installation of a road, if you want to call it that, was in the Netherlands in the form of a 98-foot bike path, which was a very, small scale kind of proof of concept, let's call it that. But there's a lot of work going on with alternatives to asphalt and so forth. So using plastic waste, that's kind of interesting, right? Now, the road in the Netherlands, this little prototype, this bike path has sensors to collect data, which is used for further development, and its own stormwater management system. And Ben, this, a little segue from the article. There's also a lot of work in having roads made of alternative materials than asphalt or concrete, as we mentioned, but also to have solar power collecting capabilities too. Imagine going through, the incredible mileage of highways in Arizona, for example, that could all be solar collectors. Can you imagine
Yeah.
something like that? So read this article. It's really great in Redshift, put out by Autodesk. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. It's a lot of these emerging technologies, like they're just going to kind of slowly seep in. Like
Hmm.
it's not like no one's going to snap their fingers and it's suddenly going to be every road is now made out of plastic. It's going to slowly be developed. They're going to find the best way to do it, and then over time, it's just going to kind of happen. So, being on the forefront, knowing what is possible, you are going to really appreciate. Kind of like you said way at the beginning, Ralph. Your job here is to kind of show people that technology is doing good things, and hey, innovation is happening. That's where I guess we kind of come in, is show people that hey, that innovation is
Yeah.
happening. It's just not going to happen overnight. So there you go.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And the next one's fun from VentureBeat, based on an IBM press release. So IBM, the research work at IBM is pretty darn impressive. Headline: IBM's new cobalt-free battery. It's a lithium-ion battery technology. So IBM's new cobalt-free battery uses materials extracted from seawater. Hmm. So let's set the stage. As the market for electric vehicles continues to grow, demand for cobalt, an ingredient for making lithium ion batteries, will explode. No surprise. But here's the deal: cobalt is mainly found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and already shortages of cobalt are soon to be expected. So,
Mm.
what do we do? So, top battery makers are scrambling to reduce cobalt content in lithium ion batteries. Now, IBM's come up with one possible solution. They've developed a new battery technology that uses minerals, and the article didn't articulate which minerals, extracted from seawater and requires no cobalt. And they hoped in a year to have a working prototype of this new battery. And here's the real kicker. Should have said IBM there. IBM said its technology has proven to outperform lithium ion batteries in terms of cost, charging time, and energy efficiency. Wow.
It's battery breakthroughs. They come up on the show often. This is one I can definitely get behind because there's a real need,
Yeah.
market influences are going to be one of the strongest motivators to change, like the environment. We all love the environment. We want the earth to survive. That's going to be great.
It would
And
be nice.
we don't want crispy koalas. Like, you get all that. But I feel like when there's a money uh, problem associated with it, such as a complete shortage, we can't make our batteries, or batteries will become prohibitively expensive.
Yes.
That's the true motivator for
Yep.
change. So
Yep.
that could lead a true change to a different kind of battery. And actually,
Yeah.
Ralph, speaking of all this, why don't we go ahead and jump on over to story number 9, because it kind of
You got
fits.
it.
And we're heading into the last little part of our show here, so
Sure.
we can start to be pretty selective. So story number
Oh,
9
yeah,
is
you
actually
bet.
pretty related to batteries, but in a different kind of way.
Oh, yes, right. From Bloomberg Business Week, the headline is: An energy breakthrough could store solar power for decades. Let that sink in. An energy breakthrough could store solar power for decades. Well, of course, that headline caught my attention. So it says here, scientists at Chalmers University of Technology in Gothenburg have figured out how to harness solar energy and keep it in reserve so it can be released on demand in the form of heat, even decades after it was captured. Just the concept alone is interesting. Whether it's all practical or really needed, TBD, but fun to think about here. The innovations include an energy trapping molecule, a storage system that promises to outperform traditional batteries. That's interesting.
Hmm.
And an energy storing laminate coating that can be applied to windows and even textiles. Huh. The system starts with a liquid molecule made up of carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. When hit by sunlight, the molecule draws in the sun's energy and holds it until a catalyst triggers its release as heat. The researchers spent almost a decade and up to $2.5 million to create a specialized storage unit that has the stability to, so far, outlast 5 to 10 year lifespan of typical lithium ion batteries on the market today. So, kind of interesting.
It is, and I always like to poke holes in things. The only thing I kind of question here, which wasn't brought up immediately, at least in the points, the full article is available if anyone would
Right.
like to go check out the
Check
show
it out.
notes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the whole research article, I did not read even the abstract, let alone the entire paper, but I'm concerned about density, because that's something that
Mm.
lithium ion has going for it, is that it's very dense, it's very compact. Batteries don't have to be of a great size to release a lot of
Right.
energy. They mentioned that they had a laminate coating that could be applied to different things. I'm just wondering that when you trap things in a liquid, how dense is that liquid and how much energy can be released? Because if you need a 55-gallon drum to do what would take like a 1 pound lithium ion battery,
Yeah.
is that a good replacement?
Exactly right. So it could be just research for the sake of research, interesting, or it could be viable. But yeah, again, it's a lot of times we look at things that are technology research, and maybe there's an aspect of this that might
Yeah.
be extracted, so to speak, and applied in a different way that would make more immediate practical sense. So yeah, we'll see.
Maybe something like this could somehow find its way into solar panels. Maybe
Yeah, that kind of exactly
yeah, yeah,
right. That sort of
maybe,
thing.
I don't know. But actually,
TBD.
and I know I pulled you all the way down to story 9. I'm
Yeah.
going to shoot you right back up to story number 8, because
Yes.
reinventing the wheel.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a
Literally.
joke, but looks like Bridgestone has done it. So what is
Yeah,
this?
actually, this was sort of my wayward little CES story. I know we did a package of them at the beginning, but this one also relates to CES. So, Bridgestone, the big tire maker, demonstrated at CES an airless tire. Proactive technology at CES, as the headline, came from Modern Tire Dealer magazine. So, let's get into this and explain why this is interesting. Is it practical? We'll see, but I think it's pretty darn interesting. So, at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, Bridgestone Corporation showcased its portfolio of advanced air-free tires, including concepts for personal mobility, meaning personal cars, and commercial fleet applications, of course, meaning trucks and that sort of thing. Um, the goal was to demonstrate how airless tires combine a tire's tread and wheel into one durable, high strength structure. And you need the show notes. You need to see the picture to get the idea of this prototype that they're showing here. It's a real thin prototype wheel, but the implications are very, very interesting. The design eliminates the need for tires to be filled and maintained with air, and essentially erases the dangers and downtime associated with a flat tire. And on the technology side of things, the company is embedding digital sensors in the new integrated wheel slash tires to monitor road conditions and the state of the airless tire unit. And Bridgestone contends further that this technology would be very important, for example, for driverless autonomous vehicles. So again, if you see the image of it, which Ben is showing on the screen right now, it's probably designed with a lot of advanced machine learning kind of design software, like the kind of software Autodesk provides. I think the concept's really interesting. The only downside, I guess, from a consumer point of view is when you need to replace a wheel or something, you're going to have to replace the entire wheel, not just the traditional tire. But on the upside of it, for commercial vehicles, I think especially, this could be possibly, if it has the same kind of feel and performance and road traction, et cetera, that a
Yeah.
traditional tire has, then I think they may be onto something that's pretty profound. And then, of course, think about military applications, police, fire, ambulance, all that kind of thing. Maybe these kinds of tires could be more reliable, less susceptible to puncture and flats and all that kind of good stuff. So kind of fun to think about.
It's and even though you said this might be this might be more expensive to replace, like they have like the insides where it has an entire area around the outside that looks a little bit like a bunch of springs, kind of
Yeah.
all wrapped around
Yeah.
the center hub.
Yeah, it's interesting looking.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it could actually be, kind of disassembled. Like, let's say if those sensors say that, the springs have lost so much of their elasticity, let's go ahead. And really, I think that's where sensors are going to come into play, is that
There you go.
they want to make sure when you have a catastrophic failure of a tire, instead of blowing a tire on the highway, people get hurt, it's awful. I'm sure that they're hoping that they can catch tires before they have any kind of
Good
accident,
point.
and they replace them, or I'm sorry, they replace
Yeah.
them in time. So that's all good. I'm more
Mhm.
interested by the source of this. I don't know how the heck you found this, moderntiredealer.com.
Yeah. It's I scan for headlines and stuff, and I was scanning for some CES stuff, and this one, like I say, just caught my eye, and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. And Modern Tire Dealer magazine is not exactly my usual area, but you know what? I said earlier, people will write off the construction industry as boring and traditional. What do you mean? It's just saws and hammers and shovels and backhoes and cranes, and it's not technology. It's not wrong. And who would think that something like Modern Tire Dealer magazine would have something so advanced and high tech? And that's where the world's going, folks. This kind of design technology is not exclusive to consumer electronics. It's branching out into all kinds of areas of our life.
I'm just shocked that they have a bunch of free white papers all on tires. They have meetings all the way out to the middle of the year for tires. They have sales analytics and news explicitly about tires. Ralph, this may be one of the strangest and most niche websites I've ever seen. This is wonderful. Ralph, there's music playing in the background. If you'd like to tell people where they can find more, we're gonna have all the show notes and all the stories, even ones that we did not do, up on Computer America. But if people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
Super easy. Just point your browser to my name, Ralph Bond, and then the word Wix, W-I-X. That'll immediately pull up the link to my website. There it is on the screen, and you can see all of the different fun things I do, and away you go.
All right, perfect. And everyone, hey, that's our program. Ralph, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We were here last month, but next month we'll do it all again, and hey, we'll have a lot more to talk about. Everyone, thank you so much. We'll be back after the weekend. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.